everyone, and welcome back. It's episode 3 of season 5 of Star Trek Discovery. This episode is called Jinaal, and we will get into all of that very, very shortly. Now, what we have to go through first is make sure you check out this week's podcast where we go through all things Discovery related. Make sure that you check out this month's edition of SFX Magazine, support print media, because there's so much stuff about Star Trek Discovery in that. You'll have seen the first 2 episodes, hopefully, see the first 2 episodes of Ups and Downs. We went through the This Season On trailer of Discovery in the beginning of episode 2. So do check that out as well, because there's some things in that trailer that are like, that's interesting to show that in a trailer. Okie dokie. So also, avoid the start of that video as well if you don't want to see what's in that trailer, because I think as well, everyone generally, I want to say, has been pretty good when it comes to spoilers. So thank you, everyone. Remember, please, if you're posting about things on social media, include the hashtag Star Trek, hashtag Star Trek Discovery. And the reason for that is that people who are trying to avoid spoilers of any kind, they can actually mute those so that anything, including those words, doesn't come up on their feed, and they can then stay spoiler free. So we're trying to do that here on TrekCulture, and also because I know sometimes any image out of context can come across as a spoiler, so we want to do our best as well to try and minimize that. Okay, so hope that's okay with everyone. Yous are all wonderful. Yous are all awesome. We have, this week, we have a little change as well, is that Chris actually gnawed through the bars of his cage and is away for a couple of days. So his hot seat is being filled by the very capable and wonderful Tom Roberts-Finn. So please, if you don't like this episode, direct all hatred toward him. You need to do no such thing. Yes, Chris is at large. He is at large. You have been warned. In the northeast of England, be careful. With all that said, shall we go through all the ups and downs? My first up of the week. At the end of episode 1, there was a dedication that says, "For JP with love." JP Lockerer was a camera operator on 40 episodes of Star Trek Discovery, and in the opening moments of this episode, the USS Lockerer is clear right there at the beginning of the episode. So it's lovely to see the tribute that's being paid to him. He sadly passed away in 2022. This episode, of course, is following on from the revelation that the next clue on the way to the progenitor's technology is on Trill. So people were wondering, are we going to see Gray this week? I mean, yes, we are. Just there you are. Ian Alexander will return for this week's episode. Be a bit bad now if he didn't, it being on Trill. But we're getting everyone together. We're getting the band together for Discovery to go and jump to Trill. That includes bringing Book on board. Now, I have bits to talk about, but I do want to say an up first of all is Book talking about, so obviously Burnham now knows that Book and Malene are connected, tenuously, but still connected. And Burnham's initial reaction is, this sounds like the beginnings of a liability. And Book asks her, does this make you uncomfortable? And she answers with, convince me why it shouldn't. And I like that, because too often I think people are there when they really bloody shouldn't be for operational reasons. I really like Burnham's reaction here. That's a definite up for me. A down for me is how quickly that's sort of brushed aside. Saying like, this is how I get my life back. Is it? Okay, so if we just pause on that for a second. Book in the last season, everything that Book went through, an awful lot of trauma, loss, horrible things, which has led to Book's now work for the Federation, helping to rehome refugees, working with them. Book's doing really good work. I think perhaps my hesitation with this one is that this is a bit of a glib and quick explanation as to why Book is on this specific, the trip to Trill mission at all. You might be handy if we run into Mal and Locke. Sure, but if we're currently worrying about the connection between Book and Malene, then is that not something that should be perhaps better explored before we commit to having Book as one of the lead members of the team? So this is actually a down, and that's my down. I'm not going to start adding to that down as well, but I will explore that as the episode goes along to perhaps explain a bit why it's not sitting so well with me. Before we leave Space Dock, the theme of this episode is relationships. Relationships beginning, relationships evolving, and in some cases, relationships ending. And I think it is very deftly handled for, I'm going to say, all of the examples in this episode. I know it's a bit of a statement. I'm going into the ups and downs saying this episode is perfect. I was quite taken aback by how gently a lot of it is handled. So let's take, for example, Raynor. So feeling a common thread is going to be the amount of ups I give to Raynor. Raynor in the ready room, having lost the epaulets from the shoulder because he's now Commander Raynor as opposed to Captain Raynor. He tries to break the ice with Burnham, and then that explains, I believe breaking the ice is a human expression. Saying things like, well, I'm used to having your job, my quarters are a bit smaller. This is his attempt at humor. And you can see that for a man like Raynor, this is taking effort. And I do like how Burnham doesn't, sort of immediately, oh, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard ever, and you're No, Burnham's like, I appreciate the effort here. I see what you're doing. And I really like the beginning of this relationship, particularly captain and subordinate, because that is something that I presume we're going to be exploring rather a lot through the rest of the season, assuming he doesn't die in like 2 scenes. Spoiler, he doesn't. Before we leave for Trill, we get a shot down in engineering where Reno, taken up, is speaking to Adira about their excitement and anxieties about reconnecting with Gray. Because as Adira explains, it's been 6 months since they've spoken, and negotiating that evolving relationship has been a challenge. So there is definite anxiety as well. Reno jokes, how many Raktaginos is that? Adira says, 2, 3, maybe 4. I think at some point on all of our lives, we have been anxious for a meeting or an event where, we will fall back on maybe, coffee will fix everything, or caffeine, or something that maybe traditionally isn't possibly the best thing to be dealing with. And so Adira leaves engineering, more hopped up than Q on Captain Picard Day. And Reno then turns to Space Dad and goes, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And Stamets is like, yeah, I mean, what we're getting out of this Romulan tricorder is just... And Reno's like, I'm talking about Adira and Gray and how it's been 6 months and how nervous they are. And poor Stamets is like, should I be nervous? Oh dear. Oh, maybe I missed something here. And full disclosure, this will not come as a shock, I am not a parent, to the best of my knowledge. And I'm assuming this is not something that you just learn to do overnight. And so Reno sort of correcting Stamets on, yeah, okay, maybe you put down the tricorder for a second and you have a look at what your child is doing here. It was a very sweet scene. It also shows to me how far they have come in their relationship. And Reno drops this pearl of wisdom, speaking about how relationships, they come together, they come apart, and how they all have a half-life. And while that plays into a part of the plot later on in the episode, I just want to say that is an up. That description of relationships having a half-life, I really like that. Discovery goes to black alert, they jump into orbit of Trill, and then we get, fix your goddamn holograms. Sorry, the Guardian then appears on the bridge and says, I shall only let you pass me if you'll answer me these questions 3. Well, it's only one question really. Because they identified pre the jump that the markings on the piece of the puzzle that they found match identically the markings of the Trill spots of a Trill scientist from 800 years before named Jinaal, hence name of the episode. Jinaal Bix, and the Bix symbiont is still alive. Well, they hope the Bix symbiont is still alive. It is then confirmed. It's a little bit forced, I won't lie, that, you must answer this riddle before we allow you to beam down, and I don't even know why there's a riddle, but I've been told that, no. it's a little bit, as Kovich would say, a little theatrical for my tastes. Back on Federation HQ, we have another relationship because Ambassador Saru is getting his quarters ready, and Ambassador Tarina comes in with a gift, and this is just, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure why I have connected so quickly to Saru and Tarina, and why I'm so invested in their relationship particularly, both in season 4 and now going into season 5. But there's something about it, there's a maturity to it, while it's also as sweet as I think anything we've seen in years. So watching their successes and watching their growth and watching their challenges, all words that you could attach to their relationship in this episode, has been thoroughly enjoyable, as much as everything else. Tarina is there to support Saru on his first day as ambassador, but she also has her own job to do, something that she is fully capable of doing while still being a crutch, if you like, for Saru. Her aide Duvan has opinions. Aboard Discovery, Raynor's off to a flying start. Thankfully, Tilly is here in this episode as well. So Raynor's been assigned that he needs to have a one-on-one with each member of the crew so that he can get to know them, they can get to know him. That's captain's orders. That has to happen. So he is there in the science lab. He's beginning to go through the clues that they have on Maul and Locke so far, and Tilly sort of reminds him, aren't you supposed to be doing the one-on-ones? To which he responds, it's not important right now, what's important is the mission. And she goes, permission to speak freely, and then begins to say, like, look, this is captain's orders, and I think this is going to be great for you, it's going to be great for the crew as well. To which he responds, I didn't give you permission to speak freely. I don't like seeing Tilly being smacked down like that, but he's absolutely right. That is an up. He didn't give her permission to speak freely. And I think Raynor, if it continues along this way, and I like where the episode goes with this as well, but Raynor can be both brought under Discovery's wing, but still bring something of a formality, or, you know, a what's the word? It'll come to me anyway. But to the interactions with the crew, that while I wouldn't want to lose the family feeling of Discovery's crew, I do think that, well, quite frankly, there can be a bit of a benefit to a more professional approach on a case-by-case basis. With permission, Burnham, Book, Culber, and Adira beam down to the Makala caves, where the symbionts are kept on Trill. There they meet Gray again, lovely to see Ian Alexander back, and they meet the current host of the Bix symbiont. So naturally, they're like, great, can we ask you some questions? And they're like, no. And you can see there's just a moment, it's very subtle, but particularly on Sonika Martin Green's face, where she's like, what? Of course, it's all to set up the Jantara, where Culber is going to become the host for at least the consciousness of Jinaal. It's a funny moment. There, you could look. I think you could look at it either way. You'd be like, surely any of this could have been put in a message. And then you go, well, no, it's all about security. It's all about keeping things safe. And there's a couple of moments throughout the episode like that where I think there's an argument for either way. It's like we could go, well, you just got to make sure that you get to know this person, make sure that you trust them. And then on the other side, it's, you could have sent an email. You know what I mean? But I would not want to sacrifice the performance that Wilson Cruz gives in this episode as Jinaal. When Jinaal takes over the body of Dr. Culber, there's, the first thing is the smile that he delivers on Culber's face. It feels genuine. Like, at no point during this episode did I feel, nor do I think this was the intention, but at no point did I feel that, oh, Jinaal might turn out to be not trustworthy or possibly have a nefarious, but no, never got that feeling at all. That he wasn't revealing everything, 100%. But perhaps that is both the way he was written, but also, of course, the way he's played. There's a great moment where, having stood up, Jinaal asks Burnham, what year is it? She says, hey, buddy, you're in the 32nd century now. And he goes, I love what they've done with the uniforms. It's a tad formal, but taken up. I mean, you know, the uniforms. And then also, and I don't find this self-serving at all, I think this is just credit where credit is due. Jinaal moves the body and goes, this guy really works out. Have you been near Wilson Cruz's Instagram? Wilson Cruz works out. Overall, in this episode, both the knowing nod there to Wilson Cruz in real life, but also his performance as Jinaal is absolutely an up for me. But it is my Latinum up of the week. Because I think that this episode sort of, it could go either way depending on how the character came across. And I think it's done really, really well. And I think Wilson Cruz does such a good job. In a fairly predictable way, Janal says, I'll take you to where the clue is hidden. And they're like, oh, we can just beam there. No, I don't remember the way. We'd better walk there. And I think everyone just kind of went. I think my worst thought was he was just like, I'm alive and I don't want to give it up for a while. And you know, best case was just like, oh, he's playing them. To what end, I'm not sure. Back aboard Federation HQ, we see Saru engaging in his ambassadorial duties. There's a very important, I feel, tidbit that's dropped here again, and it's yet another reference to the Breen. Now they're 3 for 3. There's 3 references to Breen in 3 episodes. So first of all, I'm giving it an up, not just because it's a reference. Normally I would keep that for citation observations. There is a theory that I have quickly seen doing the rounds on social media that I think bears mention. We know nothing about Locke. The first thing we saw was Locke wearing a helmet, removing it, and seeming to sort of fill out a little bit a distinct discomfort, and you know, hasn't been helmeted since. We don't know anything about Locke's origin. We know nothing about his species. We know nothing about him. Is Locke a Breen? We've never seen the Breen. There's references to no one's ever seen what's underneath the Breen's helmet and lived, which means Kira Nerys never told anyone when she presumably beat and stripped those 2 Breen on the planet with Dukat and Indiscretion, and then once again in the Dogs of War. We'll take it as a given, right, that no, we don't know what the Breen looked like. We do know that their homeworld is quite temperate. Is this finally the reveal of what the Breen look like? Support for this theory, helmet, sort of adaptive face. We don't know where Locke is from. We don't know what the Breen look like. And 3 episodes in a row, the Breen have been mentioned. I think that this is a theory that definitely deserves consideration. The crew interviews begin on Discovery, and they seem fun. We have Reese, we have Pollard, we have Christopher, we've Asha, we've Gallo, we've Linus. I don't think any of them walk away with a Raynor seems nice feeling. There is different reactions. For example, Reese is asked, tell me something about yourself that I couldn't read in your file. And he says, look, I'm a shiphead and I really like the 23rd century Connie. Don't we all? Pollard, effectively with her no-nonsense status, says, scariest thing I've ever seen? A biner having its synapses eaten by a boar worm. Christopher, lovely to see him, but I'm not downing Christopher at all. I am downing something that he reveals, which is, oh, Nilsson just got transferred off the ship to Voyager there. Oh, that would have been nice to see. Because we were wondering, where was Nilsson this season? And so to have it so glibly revealed like that was a down from me. Asha reveals herself to be a Tongo champion. Linus has had 3 clutches of eggs. And Gallo, well, Gallo doesn't get to finish their story because Raynor cuts them off mid-sentence. This does lead to yet another interview, which is the interview where Stamets comes into the room, apologizing for being late, but had come across this breakthrough, if you will, based on Reno, who, by the way, the last time she had to do this, she was given chips. Reno mentioned this half-life, and Stamets is very excited because it allowed him to sort of crack what could be the progenitor's technology. It sounds an awful lot like the Genesis Project. And not that to say it's the same thing, but this massive technology that could rewrite evolution, help evolution along. It could possibly reanimate dead matter. Wonder if that will come back. It seems very Project Genesis, and he's very excited about it. And Raynor shuts him down. Raynor had the thing of like, in 20 words or less, tell me something. And he said it was mission critical. You can use as many words as you like. That's now done, thanks. So he doesn't bother. And Tilly loses it. Tilly, once again, does not ask for permission to speak freely. And she calls him right out. And I think she makes a very good point. I will say, she could have gotten a lot of trouble for the way that she spoke to him. And he does seem like the kind of officer that would go straight to a disciplinary. But she eventually calls him out and says, you're trying to hide how shook up you are over your demotion and project this air of don't care over it to the crew. It's interesting. I completely, that is what he's doing. Tilly is right in this one. And by the way, up for Tilly calling him out on it. Again, this is going to be interesting to see where this goes, because is Rayner the kind of person who's going to take that reading very well? And there is a good scene at the end of the episode that suggests that maybe, all is not lost, but it also seems like someone who'll remember that. Down on the planet, Jinaal is trying to get a feel for Burnham and Book, and I suppose the time in which he's awoken, and explains a little bit more of what it is they're looking for, that he, with Valak and several other scientists, who he will not give you your names, don't ask, were assigned by the Federation president to study the progenitors. They eventually discovered progenitors technology, and one of their team tried to activate it and was killed horribly. Therefore, they said, it's too important for us to destroy, but we're not ready to have access to this technology at this moment in history. And so this is where the clues, the maps, the diary, everything came from. He asks Burnham and Book, are you ready now? Book goes, this is a time of peace, but he recognizes Burnham doesn't jump to agree. And he goes, well, go on, what are you thinking of? And Burnham says, it is better. Advancement isn't linear. I mean, she's absolutely right. Advancement isn't linear. Hearing it said like that makes a lot of perfect sense. It leads to, and I'm sorry to say, a fairly extended scene that I think could have been shorter. What I mean is the entire scene with the Itchernok. They look fantastic. They can cloak. It's all a red herring, which is said in the episode, but it feels like a red herring. It's a down for me that it goes on for as long as it does. It's a test. Jinaal is testing them to see how they react around species that look different from their own. Sure, I don't know. I feel there's other ways they could have done this. I think they wanted to give Burnham and Book a lot to do in this episode, which they do, and they're very good. I don't hate the scene by any means, but it does go on for 15 minutes or something, and it feels a bit like padding. While this is happening, Duvan, the Vulcan aide to Tarina, pulls Saru aside and effectively says, if Tarina were to announce her engagement to you, it would create a very difficult political future for her, particularly with the Vulcan purists. Saru initially is a little, understandably, defensive. Duvan convinces Saru that the fact that Saru is Kelpian and not Vulcan would do no favors to Tarina's political career and her future, which leads to Saru attempting to make it sound like his own idea, sitting down with her going, perhaps we should delay the announcement of our engagement so that your future... And Tarina goes, you've been speaking to Duvan. And Saru goes, yes, Duvan has a point. All I want to do is help care for you. And Tarina goes, I am confused as to when I gave you the impression that I was in the need of a caretaker. Oh, she calls it how she sees it. And I suppose skipping forward slightly, that Saru then takes the moment and comes to her afterwards and apologizes, and she immediately says, it's in the past. This relationship, I think, is one of the two most mature relationships on display in this episode. I just love Saru and Tarina together. I think they're a great pairing. I think it works really, really well. And it's quick as that. Saru then says, yep, let's get the announcement out there. Tarina knows what she's doing. There's no, a bunch of people will talk about me and I will listen to them. Tarina knows full well what she's doing, what she's in charge of, what she's responsible for. The other relationship that I find to be quite mature in this is Adira and Gray. I struggled slightly with earlier depictions of Adira and Gray because I felt that there was a lack of direction between the two of them, and in a way that comes full circle here, that they agree that having spent so much time apart and not entirely missing each other, or at least not entirely missing that closeness, that they are at a place where they can celebrate being unique individuals. Gray suggests that, well, what if we change the nature of our relationship? Because there are so many different types of relationships. To which Adira counters, I don't think I can do this any different way, which I infer we are either together or we're not. And I thought, what a thing to include in this episode, because there are, of course, many, many types of relationships, and some will work for some and some won't work for others. And Adira, by admitting that they are at this point in time, this is where they are at in terms of relationships, is absolutely fair. And I thought it was a brilliant little exchange. And even though it ends with them breaking up, it doesn't feel like a sad thing. It feels like they have made the best and most mature decision for the two of them going forward. Gray has been something of a side character for quite a while. As perhaps blunt as it sounds, his absence wasn't massively felt in season 4. If this is the only episode in which Gray appears in season 5, I think it's a very good appearance, a very good episode. And I think Ian Alexander, as does Blue Del Barrio, they both do brilliant jobs in this episode, which is why they're absolutely an up from me. After the kerfuffle with the wild beasts, the wild cloaking beasts, Book and Burnham realise that all of this was a test, and they find Jinaal, who's chilling out on a rock, just enjoying being alive again. And there's a short exchange to which Jinaal says, yeah, I needed to know how you would act. And now I feel that you are trustworthy, and hands them the next piece of the puzzle. Book answers, and if you didn't find that we were trustworthy, would you have let us die? And Jinaal doesn't miss a beat. Yes, I would have. Up. That's not cold. That's pragmatism. A famous captain and admiral of another starship that was lost in a section of the galaxy for a while was also at one time very pragmatic, and it can be the best way to be in any situation. There's too much at stake for, oh, we'll give you another chance in this particular situation. I really like how they handled that. As I say, my complaint, it went on for a bit too long, but I do like the idea behind it. Once Jinaal leaves Culber's body, we get a great scene in the mess hall on Discovery, which is just a full-on bar at this point, which I just like. We get a nice exchange between Rayner and Tilly, where Rayner seems to understand a little bit more how what he does can work in some situations, and perhaps he needs to be a bit more flexible. So I did like that exchange, but I really like the exchange between Culber and Burnham. Culber speaks about his abuela, who used to have all of these religious iconography around her home, even though she was a doctor as well. Catholic, Buddhism, Santeria, and how he would struggle with the idea that she would say not everything needs an answer, and he struggles with that as an idea. Burnham agrees and says, yes, I would be closer to yourself in that one, both of which being very valid, and yet they have been left ponderous. And of course, the stinger at the end of the episode is that down on the planet, the Bix symbiont is being allowed to rest. And whoops, looks like Maul has infiltrated. I did wonder whether to give this a down. Like, do you not think somebody would notice? But listen, do you know everyone that you work in the Makala caves with? So, great, we know that Maul and Locke are at least as up to date as the rest of Discovery now. With all that said, will you join me at Citation Observations? We open, as I say, with the USS Lockerer. Now, also we see a Connie, a Saturn class, a Friendship class. We have a Ferengi in blue uniform standing behind Book. We see that, as Book is explaining, that Maul did 2 stints in an Emerald Chain lockup. Culber asks if Vulcan meditation would work for Burnham, as it did when she was younger. We get lovely shots of Trill spots, which are as unique to the individual as human fingerprints or saurian dorsal ridges. Reno asks Adira how many Ractogenos they've had. The Caves of Makala appeared in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, of course, back in the day. They have appeared in Discovery before. And the Jantara ritual took place in the episode Facets, where all of Dax's previous hosts appeared in her crewmates. I really like that episode, actually. We see people wearing the Season 3 Discovery uniform walking around Federation HQ. The USS Noble gets a lovely hero shot. That's a Constitution-class ship, and if you agree with Memory Beta, it's a Kirk-class sub-destroyer. Mentions of the Breen. If we had a quick shot of a Soleil last week, we have an up-close and personal shot of a Soleil this week, so that was cool. A name drop of Captain Picard. The Dominion War gets referenced as well. Reese is a fan of the 23rd century Constitution class. Pollard talks about the Nakalan boar worm eating its Binar's synaptic processor. Asha talks about her nickname is Full Monopoly. She's a Tongo champion, for example. Christopher references both Lieutenant Nilsson and Voyager, and does confirm that the Tribble we saw is neutered, don't worry. Stamets speaking about the progenitors tech. There is it's a brief moment at 37 minutes-ish into the episode when I might be way off, but I heard the Wrath of Khan music in my head as he's describing something that to me sounds an awful lot like the Genesis device. Saru makes it's like a Vulcan proverb. To rush a Saylat is to risk a goring. Saylat, of course, being native to Vulcan. Poor Spock used to have a pet Saylat. In the bar at the end, Tilly is being poured a glass of Sluggo Cola that Rayner says looks radioactive. The new set of coordinates are in Zenkethi space, and in the end, I know I mentioned it already, but we actually see Burnham undergoing Vulcan meditation. That's everything this week, folks. What did you think? Did you enjoy this episode? What do you think of it in terms of the season so far? Are you enjoying the pace of season 5? Let us know in the comments below. I've really been enjoying the chatter and what people are saying, what people are talking about, both online and in the comments of the video. So thank you so much, everyone, for engaging as well. You, of course, are awesome. You are wonderful. You are brilliant. Please make sure that you're following us on the various socials. We're at TrekCulture on the various ones. We're at TrekCultureYT on Instagram. I am at Sean Ferrick on the various socials, and at Tom C. Finn or at Tom Roberts Finn. You will find the lovely Tom as well. As I say, please lock your doors and windows. Chris is at large. I cannot stress that enough. Live long and prosper until I see you again, folks. You are wonderful. You are awesome. Please make sure to lead with love and peace in your life. That is the most important thing we can do. You're great. I'll see you soon. Thanks.